Spent 31 years building houses for other people, not metaphorically, literally. I was a general contractor out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and from the time I was 26 years old until I handed over my last set of keys at 57, I built homes, starter homes, custom homes, a few commercial projects I probably should have passed on. I knew how to read a foundation, how to spot a wall that would give you trouble in 10 years, how to look at a piece of land and see what it wanted to become. My name is Gerald. I'm 64 now, and I have to tell you something that took me a long time to admit out loud. I did not see my own foundation cracking until it was almost too late. My daughter's name is Christine. She was born when I was 29, during a stretch where I was working 60-hour weeks and my wife, Patricia, was holding everything together at home. Christine was a serious kid, straight A's, debate team, valedictorian of her high school class. Patricia and I were proud in the way that makes your chest feel too small to hold it all. Patricia passed away 8 years ago, pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I don't talk about it much because there aren't words that do it justice, and the ones people offer never quite fit. What I will say is that after she was gone, Christine became the center of my world. She was all I had left that felt like family. That is important. Remember that I said that. Christine married a man named Trevor when she was 31. I'll be honest, I had reservations from the beginning. Trevor had the kind of confidence that fills a room before he does. And I've learned over a lifetime that men like that are either exceptional or dangerous, and it usually takes a few years to figure out which. Trevor sold commercial real estate in New Orleans, drove a truck that cost more than my first house, and had a way of looking at you while you were talking like he was already thinking about what he was going to say next. But Christine loved him, and Christine was smart. So I kept my mouth shut and gave them my blessing and danced with my daughter at her wedding and cried in the parking lot afterward in a way I would never admit to anyone who wasn't already reading this. They settled in Metairie, about an hour from my place in Baton Rouge, close enough to visit, bar enough that it required intention. The first loan was $12,000. Trevor had a deal that was about to close, a commercial property in Mandeville, a sure thing, just needed a bridge to cover the gap while the financing finalized. Christine called me on a Tuesday evening and explained it in the careful way she always had, like she was presenting a case. I wired the money that Thursday. The deal closed. Trevor paid me back, not all at once, and not without me having to ask twice, but eventually the money came back. So when the second call came, 14 months later, I didn't hesitate the way I should have. That one was $18,500. Temporary cash flow issue. Trevor's words, not Christine's, though she was on the call. I paid it. Then $9,000 for a tax bill they hadn't planned for. Then $22,000 because they were behind on their mortgage and just needed 3 months to get ahead of it. By the time I added it up, which I did one sleepless night about 4 years into their marriage, sitting at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, the number was $71,400, and not a penny of it had come back after that first $12,000. I want to be clear about something. I wasn't broke. I'd sold the contracting business for a decent sum. I had my pension. I owned my house outright. And I'd been careful with money my whole adult life, the way people are when they grew up watching their parents worry about it. So the money itself wasn't what kept me up that night. It was the realization that I had never once said no. Not because I didn't think it sometimes. Not because there wasn't a voice in the back of my head that sounded a lot like Patricia saying, "Gerald, you need to pump the brakes." But Christine would get quiet on the phone in a certain way, and I would think about the 11 weeks when everything fell apart. And I would think about how she was all I had, and I would find a reason to say yes. That's on me. I know that. What happened next, though, that's on them. In February of last year, I was driving back from a hardware store outside of town. I still do small renovation jobs, more for something to do than the money, when a pickup truck ran a red light and hit the passenger side of my truck at about 40 miles an hour. I don't remember the impact. I remember the store parking lot, and then I remember a ceiling with fluorescent lights and a woman in scrubs asking me if I knew what day it was. I had 4 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, and a concussion bad enough that they kept me for observation. The ribs were the worst of it. If you've never had broken ribs, I'll tell you what the doctor told me. There's not much they can do except manage the pain and wait, because you can't put a cast on your chest. Every breath is a negotiation. The nurse who was assigned to me that first evening was named Evelyn. She was probably 55, had reading glasses pushed up on her head at all times, and had the specific kind of no-nonsense warmth that I associate with women who have raised children and survived things. She got me situated, explained what the monitoring was for, and before she left she said, "You've got family coming." I told her my daughter knew. Christine had been my emergency contact since Patricia died. The hospital had called her within an hour of my arrival. I know this because Evelyn confirmed it for me when I asked. Christine did not come that first night. I told myself she was probably dealing with something. Maybe the kids. She and Trevor have two, a boy of 7 and a girl of 5. I told myself she'd be there in the morning. She was not there in the morning. Evelyn was back on shift and didn't say anything about it, but I caught her glancing at the empty chair by my bed in a way that I understood. On the second day, I called Christine myself. It hurt to hold the phone up, the collarbone, so I used the speaker and set it on the tray beside me. She answered on the third ring. I could hear the television in the background. "Dad, how are you feeling?" "I've been better," I said. "Are you planning to come up?" There was a pause, not a long one, but the kind that means someone is choosing words. "Trevor's in the middle of something big right now, and the kids have school, and honestly, Dad, the doctors are handling it, right? It's not like there's anything I can actually do there." I didn't say anything for a moment. "You could be here," I said. Another pause. "I'll try to get up there this weekend." "You're going to be okay. You're tough." She hung up before I could respond. I set the phone back on the tray. The ceiling was the same ceiling it had been the day before. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor was beeping in a rhythm that didn't change. I thought about the $71,400. I thought about every phone call where I'd said yes. I thought about Patricia, who would have driven through a Category 4 to sit with someone she loved in a hospital bed, and something in me went very quiet in a way I hadn't felt before. Not angry, not sad, just decided. Evelyn came in to check my vitals around 8 that evening and found me staring at the ceiling. "You want some company for a few minutes?" she asked. "I've got a slow hour." I don't know why I told her. Maybe because she'd been there and my daughter hadn't. Maybe because she had one of those faces. But I told her the short version. The loans, the calls, the empty chair. She listened without interrupting, which is rarer than people think. When I was done, she said, "My ex-husband's mother was in a situation like yours. She waited too long to do something about it." She paused. "You're a smart man. You know what you need to do." I did know. I'd been knowing. I just needed someone to say it out loud. The next morning, I called my attorney. His name is Franklin, and I've used him since I was in my 30s. Business contracts. The estate when Patricia passed, routine stuff. I told him where I was and what I wanted to do. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Gerald, you sure about this?" "I'm sure," I said. "Okay, I'll get started today." Over the next 3 days, from a hospital room in Baton Rouge, I made decisions I should have made 2 years earlier. I updated my will, the house, the investments, the remainder of the business sale proceeds. I restructured the trust so that a charitable remainder arrangement would handle the bulk of it, with specific bequests to my brother's kids, who I've stayed close to, and a meaningful gift to the scholarship fund at the trade school where I got my start. Christine would not be disinherited. I want to be precise about that, because what I was doing was not revenge, even if it might look like it from the outside. But she would no longer be the sole beneficiary of an estate she had apparently already decided was partly hers. I also wrote a letter. Franklin helped me with the language, but the words were mine. I did not tell Christine any of this. On the 5th day, they cleared me to go home with a follow-up scheduled for the following week. Evelyn was on shift when I was discharged. She helped me get my jacket on. The collarbone made it difficult, and when she handed me my discharge papers, she squeezed my hand once and didn't say anything. She didn't need to. A neighbor of mine, a retired school teacher named Bev, picked me up. We've been friendly for years, exchanged tomatoes from the garden in summer, that kind of thing. She'd heard through the neighborhood grapevine and had called to offer. I said yes, which was itself a small act of learning something. I had been home for 4 days when Christine's car pulled into my driveway. I was sitting on the porch, ribs still bad enough that inside or outside, comfort was approximate at best, and I watched Trevor's expensive truck turn in behind her. They both got out. Christine looked like she hadn't slept well. Trevor was in a polo shirt and khakis, which on him always looked like a costume. She hugged me carefully, avoiding the left side. She smelled like the same perfume she'd worn since college, and for just a second I was standing outside a dorm room in Baton Rouge, helping her move boxes, and she was 20 years old, and Patricia was straightening a lamp on the windowsill. Then the second passed. "We need to talk about something," Trevor said before we'd even gone inside. I looked at him. "Let's go in," I said. We sat in the living room, me in the armchair because it was easiest to get in and out of, Christine on the couch, Trevor on the edge of it like he was in a meeting. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, in that way he has, the way that's meant to signal seriousness. He told me they were in trouble. Not cash flow trouble this time. Real trouble. A deal that had gone wrong in a way I didn't entirely follow. Something about a partnership dispute and frozen escrow and a liability that had landed in Trevor's name specifically. They needed to restructure. They needed liquidity. They needed me to sell my house. I sat with that for a moment. My house is a 4-bedroom craftsman that I built myself in 2003, on a lot I cleared by hand. Patricia planted the garden in the back. The oak tree on the south side was her idea. In this market, the property would appraise somewhere between $380,000 and $410,000. "Sell my house," I repeated. "You could move into something smaller," Christine said, and her voice had a careful quality that I recognized as rehearsed. "Something easier to maintain. At your age." "At my age," I said. She stopped. "I'm 64, Christine, not 94. Trevor picked it back up. "They dotted through," he said. "I could take a portion of the sale and put it in something safer. The rest would help them stabilize." Trevor made it sound like generosity, like I'd be doing myself a favor by getting out from under a big house. I let him finish. Then I said, "I need to get something from the office." I came back with 2 envelopes, both of them sealed. One had Christine's name on it. One had Trevor's. "What is this?" Christine asked. "Read it," I said. Christine opened hers first. It was a letter from Franklin's office dated the week before, confirming the updated trust structure. It laid out in plain language what had changed and why. It also itemized the loans, all of them with dates, down to the dollar. $71,400. Christine read it twice. I watched her face. Trevor opened his envelope. His contained something different. A letter that Franklin had prepared outlining what a forensic accountant would likely find if someone were to examine the pattern of financial requests over the past 4 years, cross-reference with the deals Trevor had described as the reasons for each one. Franklin had been careful with the language. It wasn't an accusation. It was a description of facts and a statement of what I intended to do if anything happened that I didn't want to happen. Trevor's jaw tightened. You can't just—" he started. "I already did," I said. "And before you tell me I'm being unreasonable, I want you to think about where I was 9 days ago. I want you to think about who was in that room and who wasn't." Christine looked up from her letter. Her eyes were wet, but her expression was something complicated, not just hurt, something that looked to me like recognition. "Dad," she said quietly. "I'm not throwing you away," I said. "I want to be clear about that. You're my daughter. That doesn't change. But I am not selling this house. I am not giving any more money to Trevor's deals. And things are going to be different from here on out. Or they are going to be, whatever they are going to be." Trevor stood up. He had a few more things to say, none of them useful. And then he walked out of my house and sat in his truck. I could see him through the front window, on his phone. Christine stayed. She sat on the couch for a long time without saying anything. I sat in my armchair with my ribs aching and waited. "I should have come," she said finally. "Yes. I kept telling myself the doctors were handling it. You were going to be fine." "You told yourself what you needed to," I said. "I understand that. I've done plenty of that myself." She looked down at the letter in her hands. How much have we taken from you? The numbers in the letter. She folded it carefully along the existing creases, which I noticed. I didn't know all of it. I believed her partly. I believed she'd kept a version of the accounting that was easier to live with. People do that. I'd done it too, on my side. Kept a version of Christine that was easier to hold on to than the whole picture. I'm not asking you to leave, Trevor, I said. That's not my place. But I'm asking you to understand what I'm telling you. I spent your mother's whole illness sitting next to her every day, even the bad days, especially those. That's what this family does. I paused. Did? She cried then. The quiet kind, the kind that means something. We talked for another 2 hours. Trevor came back in at some point, quieter than he'd left, and sat in the corner of the room and didn't say much. There's a version of what happens next where I tell you everything was resolved and forgiven, and the family stitched itself back together over a Sunday dinner, and the sun set on a reconciliation. That is not exactly what happened. What happened is that Christine and I agreed to start over with honesty. No more loans, that was absolute. No more managing my feelings for me. She would call more. She would show up when it mattered. What happens between them, Christine and Trevor? I don't know yet. He has a way of adapting to circumstances that I've noticed before. I'm watching. The house is still mine. The oak tree is still in the south yard. The foundation is sound. A few weeks after that afternoon, I ran into Evelyn at the pharmacy near the hospital. She was picking up something on her lunch break. She asked how I was healing. I told her the ribs were almost there. The collarbone was cooperating. And the other thing, she asked? Also healing, I said, slower. But healing. She nodded like that was the right answer. We went our separate ways. I think about Patricia a lot. I wonder what she would say if she could see how I let things get so far. I think she would probably be gentler about it than I am with myself. She usually was. But I also think she would be glad I finally picked up that phone from the hospital tray table and called Franklin. She always said I knew what I needed to do. I just sometimes took the long way to do it. She wasn't wrong. I'm 64 years old. I built things for a living. I know that a structure is only as solid as its foundation, and that if you ignore a crack long enough, one day you walk across the floor and it gives way under you. I saw the crack. I let it go. And then I fixed it. That's the story. That's all of it. I'm Gerald, and this is my house. I've been thinking lately about what it actually costs to keep saying yes when you should say no. Not the money. I know the number, 71,400, written out on a yellow legal pad at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning. That number is real, but what it costs me that I can't put on a legal pad is harder to name. It costs me the chance to teach Christine something important while there was still time to learn it gently. Every time I wired money without asking hard questions, I was telling her, without words, that there were no consequences. That love meant unlimited coverage, that I would always be there to absorb whatever came next. That's not love. I understand that now. It took a hospital ceiling and an empty chair to make me understand it, but I got there. Here's what I believe about cause and effect, stripped of anything mystical. The things we allow, we teach. I allowed the pattern for 4 years. I taught Christine that she could count on my silence, my yes, my willingness to look the other way for the sake of keeping things smooth. And Trevor learned it too. Learned that I was the soft place to land when his deals went sideways. I built that. I'm not proud of it. But I built it the same way I built houses, one decision at a time, each one feeling small enough to live with. The accident didn't change me. What changed me was lying in that bed and realizing that the person who should have been in the chair beside me was watching television an hour away and telling herself a story about why it was fine. That's when I understood what I'd actually constructed. Not a relationship, a dynamic. And dynamics, if you don't interrupt them, just keep going. Evelyn didn't do anything extraordinary. She asked me a question and listened to my answer. But sometimes that's the thing. Someone who has no reason to protect your feelings just reflects the situation back at you plainly, and you finally see it. Intelligence isn't always about having more information. Sometimes it's about being honest with the information you already have. I had all the information. I just hadn't been willing to look at it straight. The envelopes were the hardest part to prepare. Not because of the legal work, Franklin handled that, but because I had to sit with what I was doing and be sure I was doing it for the right reason. I was not trying to punish Christine. I want to be clear about that, for myself as much as anyone. What I was doing was drawing a line that should have been drawn years earlier and doing it in a way that could not be misunderstood or renegotiated over dinner. That's what I'd call resolve, not anger, not revenge, just the decision to stop letting discomfort make my choices for me. Christine stayed that afternoon. Trevor did not really. He came back in the room, but he'd already left in every way that mattered. Christine and I talked for 2 hours, and it wasn't easy, and it wasn't resolved, and we didn't hug at the end like something from a movie. But she looked at me differently when she left, like she was seeing the actual edges of me for the first time, like I was a real person with real limits, not just a resource she'd stopped thinking to question. I don't know what happens next with the two of them. I'm watching. What I know is this: the house is still mine. I built it with my own hands on a lot I cleared myself. Patricia planted the garden in the back. That oak tree on the south side was her idea, and it's taller now than either of us imagined it would get. Some things are worth holding on to. You just have to decide that before someone else decides for you.